time travel, anthropomorphic animals, and 3D platforming. Let's find out more about Clive N Wrench.
Clive N Wrench is a 3D action platformer that sees you playing as the titular duo as they travel through time, visiting all manner of places across the globe, solving problems, finding collectibles, fighting bosses, and ultimately saving the world. Development of the main characters have been a fairly organic process, really. Clive was a bit of a whim trying to think up which animal made the most sense to be able to jump high, settle on a rabbit. Wrench came along a little bit later, once I realised that I needed a character that would explain some of the extra mechanics Clive was being given at the time. For some reason in my head it made a lot more sense that swinging a monkey above your head give you a glide ability than a jetpack. That's just how my head works, I guess. Throughout Clive's development, there's been varying people that would play it and give feedback on what did and didn't feel good, and it's just slowly been whittled down until everything felt just right, and the levels have been built around that moveset. The level variety and the boss levels too are all quite diverse and different from one another. For the most part, it's been a case of building the basics of a level, figuring out which time period made sense, and then adding extra parts from the history of that time period. It's kind of a back and forth until the final level feels greater than the sum of its parts. So for example, one of the earlier levels, Cajun Mob Bog, is kind of a cross between a Cajun swamp and a sort of Little Italy mafia-influenced town area. 3D platformers have been around for 20 plus years now. There's quite a number of, I suppose, a given as far as theming goes. And I always wanted to try and differentiate Clive's level somehow from that. So there's also another level, Iceratops, which is set in prehistoric times, but it's also somewhat anachronistically Christmas themed. So you've got dinosaurs running around, Christmas trees and presents, and Santa's workshop as you get further through the level. I think my favourite level has got to be Tempest Tombs, which is the ancient Egyptian level, for a number of reasons really. One, it's got some very distinct areas. You start off in a sort of town area with massive temple. You can go inside the temple and there are some puzzles and a riddle to be solved in there. Around the town itself, there are some little grey aliens that you have to free from their chains because they've been building the pyramids, and by doing so you unlock a tomb, which itself is full of traps and puzzles and is a completely different feeling area. But then also because the way it ties into the lore of the other levels, although the time periods are quite distinct from one another, there's quite often a lot of crossover. So there's Ancient Greece Trap, which has a mayor of the town or a leader of the town, Gluteus Maximus, and he is the other half of Queen Cleopatra from Tempest Tombs. And so by playing both of those levels, you get a better idea through environmental storytelling of why certain events happen from one to the other. Clive N Wrench's hub world is called A Space Between Time because it is quite literally that. It's floating out in the middle of stars, and it is quite literally the place where all of the time periods that the evil Dr. Dorcas has been to collide. Throughout the game, as you beat bosses and collect pocket watches, you unlock different sections and different levels within the hub world as you travel around it anti-clockwise to eventually reach the end.
Yeah.
I've followed and been followed by several of the members of Platonic, and we've all been very friendly for a little while now. It eventually came up that Laylee was going to voice a character in the game, which she does, Nevermore the Scarecrow. And of course, throughout that whole process, we've been quite friendly. She suggested that maybe we could do that kind of crossover, and After plenty more back and forth to figure out which character would work best and where they would fit in, we settled on the cameo that you see today. It was always very important that it had to feel organic, and Trowzer felt like a perfect fit, especially in Cajun Mob Bog, where he fits in with the seedy underbelly of the mobsters quite well.
Clive N Wrench is available for pre-order now on Nintendo Switch, and will have more updates surrounding its development throughout 2021.